Well, thank you all for joining us today in this brand new episode of Daloopa's data modeling webinar series. Now, in today's call, Thomas will walk us through the most efficient ways to build and update industry models using Daloopa. In addition to that, we have just launched a brand new Kpi search engine on our marketplace that we're very excited to walk. So with that, I will hand it over to Thomas.
Hey guys. So thank you, Anas. Well, what we're going to do today is to walk you all through two things. The first is how do we search through KPIs using Daloopa's brand new Kpi search engine. And the second thing is to walk everybody through some of the methods in which you can build an industry model. So let's start with the Kpi search functionality. So let me share my screen. All right. So once you log into the main Daloopa portal, where you're in our marketplace, you will notice a new tab right up here on the top right-hand corner called KPI. So you hit that, you log in with the same user and password, and you're going to get to a KPI search portal. We're still rapidly iterating through functionality in this portal, but this portal is now live in a beta mode for all of our customers to use. And the whole idea behind this is to enable you to discover KPIs very, very quickly across a large number of companies that you might not be covering right now. You might not have a model for right now. So let's use an example, right? Let's say I would like to think through gross margin analysis across a list of semiconductor companies, and I want to understand how inventory loads have been moving. So let's say I want to search NVIDIA, and let's say I want to compare NVIDIA and AMD, right? Natural comes to each other. Let's do NVIDIA first, and let's look at gross margins. So once I type in gross margin, what you will notice is that Daloopa will show you every single gross margin related item that the company has disclosed. Everything from the GAAP gross margin to non-GAAP gross margins to gross margins in guidance, as well as just really every single thing. So maybe you don't care about some of the guidance stuff. Maybe you only care about something very simple, right? I'm just going to look for the most basic sort of gross margin number that most of us would think about. So that would probably be right here, non-GAAP gross margin. So I'm going to select that. I hit search, and it's just going to give me that number, right? So right here, you will have NVIDIA's gross margins numbers in front of you. You can always click to get to the source location, as is with all of Daloopa's data points. And I can say, hey, look, I'm going to take this and I'm going to insert it into my workspace, right? So now I have gross margins inserted in here. Let's say I go to AMD and I want to do the same thing, right? I go to AMD, I search for gross margins, and I'm going to select non-GAAP gross margin from AMD. Let's do that, right? I have this guy. I'm going to add it into my workspace. And now my workspace has these two items. I can export it. And I have a little comp sheet of just NVIDIA versus AMD's gross margins numbers, right, in my little Excel sheet. Obviously, you could do this with a lot more tickers. You can do this with a lot more data points per ticker. Every single number, again, is always sourced to the truth, right? So you can very quickly create a NVIDIA versus AMD gross margin chart if you wanted to. Stick there. There's a little error here. Okay, here we go. Right here. I don't know what's going on in the last gross margin number here. Yeah, I guess NVIDIA's gross margin just collapsed. But yeah, right here you can see NVIDIA versus AMD gross margins pretty quickly. So this is one way to think about how to get an industry comp sheet, right? You can simply use the KPI search functionality and build through it. Well, one of the powerful parts of all of Daloopa's data is that it's always updatable. So hypothetically, let's assume that Q2 data is not ready and you want to update this for Q2 data. The Daloopa updater is going to be your best friend. You come in here and you come and say, in Excel column BA, I would like Q2 data. You hit update and you'll notice that this blank cell is just simply going to be updated as so, right? It's really that simple. So what if you say, hey, I don't want to start with this. I want to start with just the Excel models. How would you build the same comp sheet? So let me leave this up here, right? And let's build a fresh new comp sheet, below this line here. So what I have on my screen is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have NVIDIA and AMD loaded up, right? This is simply the model that I downloaded off Daloopa's marketplace. So I come in here and I say, there might be a couple of items here that I care about that I want to do a comparison between NVIDIA and AMD. Perhaps the first thing I want to look at is I want to look at, let's say, NVIDIA's, let's see what we have here, right? I want to first take a look at NVIDIA's probably total revenue, right? That's obviously important. So let's just take total revenue. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to simply copy and paste the data. Right. So for NVIDIA, this is total revenue. And I'm going to do the same exercise for every single item that I care about. So I'm just going to make this a little faster. I'm going to say, I also care about R&D spend. I also care about, let's just pick one more item. Maybe I care about cash from, I care about cash. I care about, just copy and paste it out first. So I don't forget about it. This R&D, and let's just leave it as 2. And what I'm going to do, so I'm going to compare this with the same thing that AMD discloses, right? So I'm going to open up AMD. I have that open on my second screen. All right, and I'm going to do the same exercise. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, let's pull out revenue from AMD. All right, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. I want to make sure that the quarters are lined up for AMD and NVIDIA. So I believe my NVIDIA model started in, so NVIDIA models 4 quarters longer. So I'm just going to get rid of 4 quarters data for NVIDIA. And AMD, I'm going to do the same exercise. I'm going to look for R&D, just right here. Right, and I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. Now, perhaps what you care about is R&D as % of revenue. And so you're going to do your math. Right, and you're going to do the same thing for AMD. And let's just say this is all we care about for now, right? But obviously you could do this again with a lot more companies and with a lot more information. And once you've gotten yourself to this position, let me get the quarters right.
This is very, very powerful stuff, Thomas.
Yeah, it takes a second to set up, but once you've set it up, you can really compare the key metrics you care about across a large amount of companies.
Right. So this is very, very powerful.
So right now, we're looking at NVIDIA's R&D as percentage of revenue versus AMD's R&D as percentage of revenue. Let's say you want these things charted out. So there you go. We have a little chart. And what's powerful about this system is once you have this entire thing set up, you never have to worry about it again, right? So again, I'm just going to delete some data here. I'm going to pretend that we're sitting here in 2021. Right, and we don't know what's going on in 2022, but obviously as the companies report results, you would like your dashboard updated, right? You want to understand how NVIDIA and AMD are tracking not just in terms of revenue or R&D, but in terms of the ratio of R&D to revenue. So you just come to your updater and you would say, in this case, in Excel column AL, right, you want 2022 Q1 data, and I'm going to add Excel column AM, I want 2022 Q2 data. Hit update them. And now all the data is updated. I just have to flow through my calcs. And then you can see that, NVIDIA is spending a lot more R&D as percentage of revenue than AMD is. And in fact, you can see that the ratio of R&D to net sales has been higher for NVIDIA, for a pretty long period of time relative to where AMD has been, when before, AMD was spending more than NVIDIA. So you can actually see the swap over here. And of course, if you want to compare absolute values, it becomes, you can do that with a different chart. So you can do all sorts of analysis that you want to do, right? NVIDIA versus AMD's absolute value and relative value spend. And, you could do this over a large amount of tickers, a large amount of KPIs, and all of them will be updated over time. So what does that look like when you fully build something like this out? So I'm going to pull this up, right? So if I were to build out all of the semiconductors, you basically get a little dashboard like so, right? I'm looking at all of the inventories relative to gross margins, right? I'm trying to figure out semiconductor cyclicality for all of you who have gone through this exercise before, across all the semis companies, right? Amphenol, Micron, Maxim, so. But the power of this thing is, obviously this thing is a little bit dated. The last time we updated it was 2021 Q3. There's a couple more quarters that has been created since then. I can just come in here and I can say, look, I would like to update this, right? For Q4, 2022 Q1, 2022 Q2. And you can use the updater and you can just run the update, right? Same idea. I'm just going to update it. 8 hours Q4. This is Q1. Let's just update it for 2 quarters for now. And the updating is just, really that straightforward. And the way I built this comp sheet really is by doing a simple exercise of just copying and pasting the data, right? But at Daloopa, we provide you with multiple options of how you can build your initial comp sheet. The first option, as we started the call with, is to actually come in to the platform, hit the KPI button, and just search for anything you want, right? You want Amphenol, gross margins or inventory. You just simply have to search for it, inventory, right? You can simply search for it and find it. Amphenol is inventory. Let's try, NVIDIA.
So this would be the best way to find KPIs across a large number of tickers, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because this is a client we get from this is a question that we get from our clients on a very frequent basis because they're looking to optimize their industry comp sheets, industry models, and so as opposed to copying and pasting from different sources. I think what one of the questions that we had is, how do I find specific KPIs across a number of tickers? So this looks like it answers that questions perfectly.
That's correct. This is how you would do it. And we will constantly work to improve the algorithm behind this. But the idea is you can very quickly narrow your scope down to all the items that are relevant to what you just searched for. In this case, I just searched for inventories. So I'm looking at every single thing that has a mention of inventory that the company has disclosed, right? In this case, it's inventory in the cash flow statement. So this is a change in inventory. Perhaps you don't care about that, but you care about total inventory maybe. And every single item here, again, is going to be one-click link to the actual source location. So this is the first way to do it, right? And the second way to do it is simply to go back, go to the NVIDIA file, actually download all the data that NVIDIA has disclosed in Excel, and then actually look through it within Excel. It's just a matter of personal preference, what you prefer. But both will get you the exact same data, right? And all the data from Daloopa will always be updatable.
Yeah, it looks like a KPI builder is absolutely the KPI search engine is going to be a huge time saver.
Yep.
So you can hone in on specific KPIs across a variety of tickers. So you wouldn't have to. I guess to your point, it comes down to a personal approach, but it just seems to me that the KPI search engine will actually help dramatically compress the time that it would take for you to update your industry models.
Yep, that's what we are hoping for. And of course, if anyone here has feedback on how we can improve the product, please reach out to any of us directly. We'd love to hear any feedback.
We'll definitely reach out, and we'll make sure. I think this is actually, I want to stress that the KPI search engine or any actually developments or improvements that we brought to our product are very heavily influenced by the needs of our clients. So that is actually very important. Thomas, I actually do have just one last question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the question actually, this comes on a fairly recurrent basis, is what happens when it's to a standard industry metric that is not disclosed but can be calculated, for example, ARR, net retention, etc.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Daloopa philosophy is we don't update information that is not disclosed, but we update all information that is disclosed. So for example, let's use NVIDIA as an example, because what NVIDIA will, I believe, does not disclose to you is the actual gross margin number. Actually, I forget. Looks like they give you gross profit, right? But let's hypothetically assume that NVIDIA only discloses revenue and cost of revenue. Right? Let's assume for a moment that this is what happens, and you have to calculate gross profit and gross margin on your own. And let's say this is true across all semi companies for some reason, right? I do believe that a lot of semi companies actually don't disclose directly gross profit. They just disclose gross margin, and you have to perform the calculation. And in this world, basically what's going on is you're saying, okay, these two numbers are calculated and therefore will not be updated by Daloopa.
Yeah.
Right? However, these two numbers are calculated of, the numbers that are disclosed. And so any updating that needs to be done should be updated through the actual company's disclosed numbers, and you leave your calculation formulas intact so that we can update it for you. And so in this case, you can update for P 2022 Q1 and AQ 2022 Q2. Right. So in this case, this is pretty much how you perform the update, and that's how you get the information, flowed in. Again, this, we use NVIDIA as an example, but you could have used any company, and that's how you would do it. So what we've seen people do is sometimes they will have a whole section where they will say, this is NVIDIA gross margin, and then they will have AMD gross margin, they will have, Intel gross margin, and so on. And the objective is to update for this section. But in order to update for this section, because all the calculations are in a different part, so they'll basically have NVIDIA gross margin to be a different part of the model, and then AMD and so on. And so you have the part of the model that you're looking at that's basically flowing in from your calculation of the base numbers that's been disclosed. But you always have a data section that Daloopa is updating so that your gross margin numbers, in this case, gets updated.
Beautiful. That was actually the last question that I had. Any last comments that you wanted to add, Thomas?
Yeah, so I guess the only comment is just the reiteration that we're working very hard to make sure that our customers have multiple ways to access the data and to play with the data. This week we launched the Kpi Search functionality. You can find it again on the main website. Please take a look at it. Let us know if you have any feedback. The reason we developed this was because many of our customers have told us that they would prefer a way to search through KPIs without having to open up multiple Excel files, because opening up too many Excel files lags the computer by quite a bit. So that's really the root of why we created this feature for everybody to use. This is a new feature, so I'm sure there's a lot of improvements that needs to be made, and we'll love to hear all the feedback possible.
That's great, Thomas. And I wanted to thank everyone for joining today. I a recording of this one and the previous webinars will be available on our YouTube and LinkedIn pages. And the next webinar in 2 weeks from now, we will actually be showing you how credit teams and investors use Daloopa. So look forward to that invite. Thank you, Thomas, so much. And
Thank you.
thank you all for joining.
Thanks.